Welcome to Carrying Stones and Digging Holes to Cultivate Consciousness, where, for the next 2 hours, Bridgette Lynn Dolgoff and Kelsey Sweet will be sharing their knowledge and understanding with their own beautifully unique twists on all topics related to helping humanity to achieve betterment of health in body and in mind. Settle yourselves down on this fine Saturday evening. For now, it is time for Bridgette and Kelsey.
So we're all good. So it is the 2 hours for Kelsey Sweet and Bridgette Lynn Dolgoff on carrying stones and digging holes to cultivate consciousness. Yep, that's us. Saturday, 8 p.m. Eastern Standard Time.
Hello.
Hello.
Hi.
So anyway, so let's go ahead and do the details. I know. Yeah. All right, everybody. So out there, everything we do here at Revolution Radio, we all do it for free, even the management. So all we ask that you help us to keep the lights on. So you can go to Revolution Radio, freedomslips.com, and I just went on there today, and so there's, each category is now highlighted in dark black, which is a really good thing on the website. So it used to be where everything used to be one page. Now it's all sectioned out. So if you click on the donation button on the website, you'll be able to see all the different ways that you can actually donate to Revolution Radio. I think we have like an international pay box now. We have Patreon, which is a monthly doodad. We also have snail mail. You can send in checks or money orders. And then we have the one-time ATM debit card or credit card. So please leave us a donation. We would really, really, really appreciate it. Let's see. Also, you can also go on to schedule, and you can see Kelsey and I there in Studio B at 8 p.m. Eastern Standard Time slot. There's no longer a host back page, so you'll have to go to our website. So the website you can go to is coe-llc.com. That's my website. If you scroll down to the page, you'll see the show. Name of the show, click on that, and has all the information about the show, and Kelsey, myself, and all of our links. And then Kelsey also has her own website that you can go to look at separately from that, and that's just kelseysweet.com. All right, so we've got all that, the details out of the way. So we have Mitzi on today. She's also a host here at Revolution Radio, and we're going to talk about acupuncture, the multi-dimensional aspects of acupuncture. But okay. I felt like we should do a check-in. So how was your week so far, Kelsey?
No, you go first.
How my week was?
Yeah.
Why?
It's just been a long week, and I'm tired.
And you don't feel like talking?
No, not about my week.
You don't want to talk about your week? Well, how about talk about just one day, maybe, of your week?
You know, today we made some lemon bars. Axe, my son and I, we made lemon bars. They're delicious.
I think we call that evasion.
It's like, no, it's homeschooling. You know, the kids got to learn how to bake. It's culinary.
Mm-hmm. Okay, how about we'll ask Mitzi about her week. How's your week been?
Hi, you guys. It's really nice to be on your show with you. I usually listen to it on Saturdays. I really like it, so it's nice to be here. Yeah, let's see, my week, huh? Well, that's hard to say. I don't know. I mean, in general, my life is pretty good. It's just there's just so much craziness, and we actually had a speaker come to the little town that I work in, and he's he's sued our governor a couple of times, that gruesome guy, Newsom. And so he's in this, I think he's a Senate representative or something, this guy that spoke. And that was just yesterday. So that was kind of neat, where there was kind of a good little crowd there, and nobody wearing masks, and nobody social distancing or anything at this thing. And so I always enjoy it. I feel like it's so helpful for me spiritually, just to be standing next to other people who are not wearing masks is really kind of makes my week. It picked me up a lot just to be in that little crowd of people. So that was a good thing. Yeah.
You also had like a big garden thing too happen this week, like control of your community garden, got control back of it and had your first meeting for the season, huh?
Yeah, it's a tiny little garden. It's a little neighborhood garden. And we were calling it a community garden, but just with all the crazy hype that's going on with, the commie word, I really am pushing to change the name to neighborhood garden, which it just feels more homey and sort of more down home kind of thing. So yeah, but last year, I think I had talked about it on my show a couple times where, these people came in, and these sort of liberals from Southern California, there was 3 of them, a couple and somebody else, another woman, and they just really tried to immediately take the garden over without ever even coming to one of our meetings before. They went to the city and said that they were from the garden and they were asking for all these things. And, they drew up this contract for us to sign. And, we've been gardening there for over 20 years, just friendly people with 3 friendly rules. It's organic. Don't take people's food unless they tell you can, and don't water unless somebody asks you to, so we don't start overwatering things. And so it was kind of disturbing when that happened last year. So yeah, we're starting the new year off without any of them in the garden. So I think it's going to be a lot better. So
Yeah, that's the thing, is like it's running just fine until the takeover, and then everything, then nobody ends up joining. So I'm glad that you actually like worked really hard and held on to it.
Yeah, I was the one, it seemed like the one that was most distressed by that possibility of it getting taken over, even though, we're all kind of getting older, and I wouldn't mind giving it up to somebody, a younger person who wants to take it over, but I was not going to give it to those people, yeah, but it's been a real fun. We used to do a lot of stuff, like we had contra dances for benefits and plant sales and just different things over the year. And it was a real kind of community sort of neighborhood, like getting people together and creating, networking through gardening was really great. And we used to have movie nights a lot during the winter. On Friday nights, we'd have these movie nights and have popcorn and tea and just show different kinds of like gardening movies or small farming, or just interesting movies. And that was really fun. But, this last year we pretty much didn't do anything except for garden. But
it sounds like your neighborhood garden is ideal for somebody like me. If I was there, I'd be tearing it up. It wouldn't be a garden, it'd be a jungle.
Yeah, it's kind of, we started it to be a food forest. So there's a bunch of, let's see, we had to take out 2 fruit trees last year, an apple and a pear, because they got the fire blight, and we really tried to get rid of it, but one of them, they were just getting decimated, so we had to take them out. And this year we're doing a lot with, we got some biodynamic compost that's made locally here up on the Oregon coast. And so I was, the only one that was, so these people wanted to spray copper on the trees, which was supposed to be, you know, a benign treatment for the trees, but I was like the only one that was completely against it. I think they ended up doing it while I was gone. And so, I don't know. Or no, actually, no, what they did was that, maybe you know about this, the oil, I don't know, some kind of oil spray that they put on there for the fire blight.
Yeah, well, I mean, we do things like completely, like biodynamically, we just kind of have a different approach than any of that. But, talking on the copper thing, just, something that I talk to a lot of my clients about, because people will get, sicker when they're doing a lot of like fruit juicing and stuff like that, because a lot of organic produce, a lot of this stuff is okay if you're doing like minimal, but most people don't even wash their organic produce. And more there have been organic farms that have been using copper for, copper spray for types of pest resistance. So, most people, even organic people, do not wash their produce. So, all you have to do, this is like, let me just tell people this because it could save lives. You get all your produce and your fruit from the grocery store. You do like lukewarm water. You fill it up halfway through the sink. You put a cup of apple cider vinegar in there, or squeeze a whole lime or lemon in there, and then swish it around. Let your produce hang out for a while and swish it around, and then rinse it with fresh water as you take it out and put it onto a towel and let it dry. And that will kind of help to release some of the stuff that's attached to it. So even if it's organic, it could have, if they're in a monoculture, it's really hard to, I just had a conversation with my friend from Canada because she's learning about GMOs, and so that leads you to monoculture, and even organic monoculture is a problem because it's not good for the soil, it's not good for humans, even though there's so many of us that we need our food grown, and that's the negative downside of it. But farms really need to diversify to keep insect populations down, and even organic ones from using things that could be, potentially dangerous. So, the amount of serving, say, for example, on one head of celery may not be a big deal if you don't wash it and you're just eating a piece here and there and putting peanut butter on it. But copper, like any heavy metal, can cause kidney and liver failure, and can cause and brain damage, and like a whole host of all kinds of other issues. So say, for example, you decide to go on a juicing program, and you're buying all organic produce, but you don't wash your produce. And in that particular area where you're buying it from, or in your store, those organic farms are more than not using copper to defeat types of pests. So then when you put it into the blender and you're blending it, you have a super copper cocktail, because you're juicing so much of the stuff that under regular protocols, if you were just eating it, you wouldn't be eating enough to cause heavy metal poisoning. But because you're juicing it, large amounts of it, now you're overloading yourself with heavy amounts of copper. So it's always good to try to wash stuff and just get as much stuff released from it. And then, so that's a really important thing about copper. And then the other thing too is that if you're going to use things like that, you should have a lot of mycelium in your ground. You should, really learn how to build up the psyllium and, or the mushroom content. The mushroom is actually the flower from the mycelium that grows underground. But because mycelium would immediately eat up any heavy metals and radiation. So if you're going to use that stuff, even organically, you should probably beef up your mycelium in the soil too, so that it can actually, when it hits the ground, it can actually digest it instead of it sitting in there and being uptaken by other plants.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I was doing actually. I was drenching somebody, a permaculture guy, Tom Ward. His name is, I think he changed his name to Hazel, up in Oregon. I asked him. I'm in an internet group with him. Siskiyou Permaculture Resource Group. And that's what he said, is to drench the soil with like compost tea that's got mycelium in there. So I was doing that last year, and well, that's good to know. Yeah, I guess that's what they said, that it was okay to use on organic stuff. But then when I looked into it more, it said that it actually can be damaging to like beneficial insects and stuff. So
Yeah, well, anything like that creates an imbalance, right? An overload is probably not good. But if you use the compost tea, or say you do the preparation, so let me give people just kind of a minimum idea. When we use biodynamic preparations, they're made, most of them are made, in relation to cow dung, and we put them in a horn, and then we make other preparations from them, like barrel preparation, where we add all of the preparations after they've been broken down underground for about a year, because we follow astrological charts to cure and plant and seed and put our cures on. And so when we get the preparation,
I have a question about that, because we were just talking right before the show. I was telling you my friends raised a cow for us. A bunch of us bought it together, and so we're going to get some beef. And then they asked me if I wanted the head, and I was like, oh my God, I have no idea what to do with the head of a cow. So I said, no, you guys keep it, and they're going to cook it tonight. They're Mexican, and they cook it outside. They build a fire, and so I'm going to go over there and see that. So, and then you had said that you use the beef head too for the preparations. What's the difference of just doing it with a horn or with the whole head? Like, what does that do? You were saying.
Well, the horn, we usually put a couple different preparations in the horn. So the horn, like, we put the cow manure in it. So that would be, I think, the 501. And then we also put some of the 501 into the barrel prep, which is a few other preparations that are together. And we put that into a base in the soil, but it's blocked off around the edges and the top and secured in, and then it cooks for a while in there to get more and more microbes going. And then some preparations, like oak bark preparation, which is the skull. So we take the cow skull, and this is kind of a funny joke, but this is a joke that my biodynamic teacher, who was handpicked by the Biodynamic International Society to come to Rudolf Steiner College and teach the biodynamic program 25 years ago. And that's a pretty big thing. So he always used to say, because we only use cow manure, lactating cow manure, we don't use male compost, and so he would always say, we only deal with cow shit. We don't deal with bull shit. So that was like his little joke. But yeah. The cow head is done in the winter or in the fall. And usually what we do is we strip the cow hide or the cow skull of everything. We use other parts of the cow during that period of time also to make some other preparations that deal with, internal parts of the cow, that you put chamomile in one, and there's all these different kinds of preps that relate to animals in the plant world. But the cow head is an interesting one. It was one of the first ones I learned about. And so you strip everything off, and then you take the brain out, and then what you do is you take oak bark. They have a certain tool that they use in biodynamics, so we don't destroy trees, but it scrapes off some of the outside bark. And then we use water that has gone through a flow form, biodynamic flow form, based on the work of Victor Schallenberger. So most people on biodynamic farms have some type of flow form. And what it does is it raises the water's vibration. It acts like a river or a creek, and so it agitates the water and puts oxygen in it. And then also it what in biodynamics we call returns the water spirit back to it. And so you take that water and then you put them together. And then you put them into the cow head, into the brain cavity, and then you usually have corks, and then you cork it really, really tight. And then what you do is you put it into a water instrument. So some people that don't have really any kind of waterways, or they don't want to put it in the cow head into the pond because they don't want that to kind of disturb the balance of the water of the pond, then what they'll do is they'll stick it in a bucket and let rainwater fall off and be trapped in the bucket to cover it. Some people put it on creeks on their property, and that what'll happen is you put it in the creek, and then the water ebbs and flows over it. Sometimes it's below it, sometimes it's above it for a whole year. And then you take the oak bark prep out, and then you do the homeopathic remedy with it. So you basically will take as much as you need, put it usually into a 5-gallon bucket, and then you would stir it or vortex it so that you bind it to the water, the medicine in the oak bark into the water. And then you filter it out, and then you spray it. And usually, stirring takes about an hour, and you do it either in the early morning or you do it in the late evening, and then, spray it on what you need. The thing about oak bark, without getting really heavy duty, into the whole thing, oak bark builds a relationship to the calcium that is in the cow head. So it starts to learn all these different things like data, right? Program, things that you stick into the computer, you download file, and then you go stick it into something else. But we're using plant matter and water as the hard drive, and then binding the medicine and the knowledge, the information and data that the oak bark has picked up over the year. So it brings calcium. It brings not only calcium, but the information to the soil and surrounding plants that it's sprayed onto about calcium. So it can make it easier to uptake calcium because this information is provided. And then the other part of oak bark, because it has a relationship to the force of water, it has a relationship to water, it learns about the course of its relationship, sometimes being completely underwater in the cow head and sometimes not being under the water, kind of drying out a little bit. It learns the difference between what drought and what flooding is. And so not that it can save your plants from a major flood. I mean, obviously they'd be carried away. But they can also give information to the soil, so when the plants are growing, they can uptake this information and data about water, having a lot of water or less water. So if you start to have a drought, the plants already have a program. They're like, ooh, we can utilize this program on how to be a little bit more drought resilient. Or if they get too wet, they can use the information and data from the oak bark prep that's already been applied to their little programs.
That's really cool. I mean, and especially being in California and on the West here, it's just, that seems like it'd be a really important thing to do. I'll have to check. There's a homeopathic or a biodynamic tea bags that somebody's making at that same company that's making the compost. And I'll have to look and see if there's oak bark in there. That sounds really good. We need that.
And when you get it, you just let me know, and I can tell you how to spray it. But the other thing too about preps or compost tea or any of that kind of stuff, and if I ever get over to your area, I can do a class on biodynamic compost, and you guys can just make your own. And you can bring all your stuff that you have to put in there, to make your own. You won't need to buy from somebody else. But anytime you want to spray, you want to spray the tea, or you want to spray any of these preparations, the big thing is that you've got to make sure that the ground is wet and moist. And so if it is dry, you want to water it quite a bit before you spray the preps. And I think it's best to spray the compost tea or the preparations at night in the evening, because then they're not going to be killed. The microbes are not going to be killed from it in the sunlight. Because if
Yeah.
you're putting it on topical, so it gives them time to, get into the soil a little bit. And if you keep watering, kind of a thing. And this is kind of a crazy story. We're probably going to be talking about farming instead of our actual topic, which is fine. I would rather talk about farming, growing food. But a friend of mine that lives in Reno, and she owns the Reno Psychic Institute here. And so they've been living in their house, I don't know, 25 years. And, mine, it's the desert, it's high desert. So it's pretty sandy. And they every year tried to have a garden, and then they made this really horrible compost that was getting a lot of mold in it, just because it wasn't managed and caretaked. And so it was just contaminating like the whole backyard, and they're growing. It just looked horrible. They couldn't even really get anything to kind of grow, even after 25 years. And so I said, well, I'll get you some biodynamic preparation. We'll use barrel prep and some horn manure, and then I'll come over and stir it. But I need you to water the area for the next several days before I come over and spray it. And then I'll spray it in the evening, and then the next morning water it really good so the microbes can get sunk in before the sun comes up, before it gets too hot. And then just go ahead and plant, put some manure or mulch over it, and then plant where you want to plant. And it'll be good. Well, anyway, it was so funny because I didn't really talk to her for like the whole season. And by August, she gave me this huge basket of like all this produce. And I said, hey, you go on the farmer's market? She goes, no, that's what came out of our yard this year.
Wow.
She said, I've been giving it away in droves. Like she said, it's like a jungle back there. I have to machete it down. And I was like, it just, makes a difference.
Wow.
Microbes are important inside of our bodies and outside of our bodies, because our bodies are like soil.
Yeah.
So much like soil.
Yeah, where we have the neighborhood garden, it's a city lot, and it used to be kind of like a little bit of a burn pile and a little bit of a not a very healthy piece of land. It was dredged from the creek. There's a creek right there, a seasonal creek, which hasn't been up in about 6 years or 5 years or something. But that's the extent of the drought here, or not drought, but the geo weather warfare that's going on here. But so we inoculated the whole area with mycelium, and there was this guy who was really into it, and he had a whole like lab set up and stuff, and he brought us huge bags of mycelium, and we would have workshops and stuff, and do the whole, we did some mulching and putting down different layers of things to mulch the place and to build soil, and also to inoculate the soil with the mycelium, which, like you said, is the root system of the mushroom. So we used oyster mushrooms, which I'm sure you know about, that are really good for breaking down toxins in the soil and all kinds of nasty stuff, and also building the soil and the microbes. And it was amazing. Like, we still see, the little white threads of the mushroom root system in the soil there. And we've just kind of over the year, we definitely had to build soil there, though, over the years there. And I bet your friend in Reno, but that's amazing, that situation with the biodynamic. I'm excited to start using them. I think it's, I think it's going to really help. So.
Well, another thing too is like there's a whole, like, I don't want to call it a form, but it like connects you up with, because Steiner always talked about the forces, and the forces that are unseen, in the ground, and how, we relate to the ground and the food. And I mean, he has one of my favorite quotes, which is, if we continue to eat, and this is 100 years ago, I mean, because he was murdered in 1924 by the Dark Brotherhood, because they didn't like him, or what we would call the cabal now, I guess. But he has a quote that says, if we continue to eat from unhealthy soil, we will be like stuck or trapped in the prisons of our bodies, because you won't be able to have consciousness if you have a body that doesn't feel good, that's in pain, that's unhealthy. You can't raise to consciousness.
Yeah.
you're like
Well,
more like living in a prison.
I know, and we're seeing that more and more. Just at least in my practice, I'm sure you see it in your practice too. But the kinds of diseases that are coming up, or the debilitated states of being that people are in, it's just getting harder and harder to deal with.
Yeah,
Yeah.
degenerative diseases are seriously, are on the increase for sure.
hmm And it's yeah, it's sad. People don't really take a lot. It seems like the majority of the population doesn't take food into consideration, and soils too of the food, for their well-being. They just think that they're going to just keep going along eating that plastic food that we get served, and think that their bodies are going to just miraculously stay strong, but it doesn't work like that. And I tell people all the time, I mean, I'm 61 years old and I actually feel better than I ever have in my whole life.
Ding, 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 ding,
Ding,
ding.
ding.
Yeah,
Yay.
me too. I know. I tell people that. I saw a client of mine today. I'm back on my upswing. I kind of had a couple years of intense, stress because I was doing caretaking of somebody who was very difficult to do caretaking for, and then he finally strangled me and punched me, in December.
Oh my God.
So I had to leave, and so I'm just really glad I'm back on my upswing because I'm not going to do any home health care or caretaking anymore. That's kind of like the end of the line. But
Yay.
I saw a client of mine today I haven't seen since 2012 who moved back to Reno, and I'm going to start working on her because she had gotten in a really bad car accident. But she looked at me and she goes, "How come you never age?" I said, "Well, I do age. I probably don't think I age as fast as other people." And I said, "Some days I look worse, but I'm my whole reality is based on health." And I think it probably like you yourself, being in healthcare, like you can't really do that work if you alternative medicine if you're not considerably healthy, like you can't, deal with. There's a lot that you have to deal with in healthcare. Like I have to make assessments. I have to actually physically work on people. I have to figure out, like where their energy systems are at, where they're at, their diet, trying to figure out how to get them off pharmaceutical drugs, trying to get them on certain kind of herbal medicines. And there's a huge amount to know, and there's a ton to juggle. And I can't, be mentally off, and I can't be physically off because it's a pretty demanding job. I
Yeah.
love it. I love everything
Mhm.
about it, but it's demanding. And so, I think you just really work on your health. Plus, I don't think you end up in alternative medicine if you hadn't been to hell and back with your health. Because, most of the reason you do it and get all the certifications is because of what your own health, has taken you down. Like me having had brain cancer when I was 32, I was already in alternative medicine, but nothing I knew during that time, nor anybody else, could help me with my problem. Because nobody really had any really, viable answers, even the alternative people. So, I had to go kind of on a whole, machete a new road. And try to figure that out. So now I can, talk to people about cancer, and I get, I'm not sad anymore when I see people die of cancer because it's so curable at this point. It had to be some kind of choice. I mean, there had to be something inside of them, guilt or shame or anger or something that they couldn't actually get over, that they would choose, to do therapies that actually shorten their life and or kill them in the process.
Yeah.
But we have so many, there's so many good things, and food is like the number one thing. Growing your own food from soil and from dirt and getting those microbes into your body is like not just a life insurance policy, but it's the most important possible thing that you could do or learn how to do and share, like at this point in time, because it's the only real medicine. It is the backbone of, health.
Right. I remember in acupuncture school, our dietetics teacher would tell us, don't bother trying to teach people about herbs and stuff, because they'll learn certain things, but the most important thing is the food. Like, that is the bottom line. You really need to teach your patients how to eat. So I do a lot of work with nutrition, and it's really good because, and then I found the Weston A. Price Foundation, and you probably know about them. Yeah, they're great. If you become
Steiner people love them. Steiner
yeah,
people
yeah,
study
I
them,
know.
and Victor Schauenberger.
Yeah. So if you became a chapter leader for your area, you have access to, like, they'll give you brochures. Their basic brochure is probably about, I don't know, 10 pages long. It's just a small one that fits into a stand on your desk. But it's really, really good basic information about fats and oils and salt and sugar and honey, all different kinds of things, and just myths and truths about those different things. And so you don't have to really reinvent the wheel. You can just say, here, I want you to read this whole thing before you come in next time, and let's talk about it.
Yeah, well, the problem is, I don't know. I probably couldn't get anyone to read them. I mean, but I would love to do it. I'm going to actually look into it, though, for sure. I'm like, that's very exciting to me. But so Weston Price, for people out there, because a lot of people don't know who Weston Price is. Weston Price, like the 40s and 50s, he started noticing how, I'm going to use this term, and I'm not being racist because I'm white. But he started to notice, white people were showing up more with teeth that were crooked. And he he was a dentist, so he decided to try to research what was causing the crookedness in teeth. And so it took him into tribal areas, studying tribes and their teeth, because their teeth were perfectly straight, perfectly white, had no decay. And then it led him to do research papers. So like anybody out there that wants scientific proof, there's tons of scientific data to support all of Weston Price's work. And basically what he found through a whole bunch of studies and research is that the more crooked your teeth are, the more chromosomal defects you have. And that this actually, what he was studying, was derived from food. And that he found, like, in tribal cultures where they didn't have sugar, they ate off the land, they didn't have sugars or flour or any kind of refined foods. And he was one of the first ones that actually talked about putting a skull and crossbone on all sugar and all flour products that were heavily milled and refined, where the outside, where it has the nutrient part of the grain, was removed, and then you just had the powder refinement, which had nothing in it. Because also too, this gets into this, if you're eating a lot of refined sugar or refined flour and stuff like that, when you take it in, your body actually has to pull nutrient out of your tissues and bones in order to get it to be digested and move through to the body, because it has nothing in it at all. So your body actually takes the brunt by eating it when you're already nutritionally deficient. But he found that these things, once they started being introduced into the culture, started to cause chromosomal damage shown by the teeth as crooked teeth within one generation. And then by the time you have 3 or 4 generations, you have predominantly crooked teeth, that they're not straight, they're not set in the mouth right. And then he started to work on with other people, those different teeth and what those different teeth mean in your mouth as far as different areas of your body. So then he could actually look into people's mouth visually, and he could figure out all the different chromosomal damage that you had and where those problems could be found. And then, in America, we like to straighten teeth, which is a problem. I mean, especially for practitioners like me, like plucking your eyebrows, coloring your hair, straightening your teeth, doing all kinds of things. Facelift makes it harder for people, alternative practitioners, to read their clients, because you have to kind of actually take a look at what's going with the body and the different parts of the body to kind of get a visual grasp of the general health of the So American cultures like learned how to like wipe off anything that you could actually look at to say, oh yeah, look at that. You've got some of this going on. You've got some of that going on. And oh, look at those 2 teeth are off. That's probably, you probably got some digestive chromosomal damage, kind of a thing. So, but anyway, that's Weston Price. People can go look at him. And he did a huge amount of work, mind-blowing work, actually. And there's a lot of books that are left out, like Sally Fallon. She's an amazing lady. She writes a lot of books, Weston Price books, on nourishing the self and a whole bunch of recipes to be able to actually get the proper fats in the body, for longevity and health. You got something to say, Mitzi? Add.
Yeah, I wanted to say too that, just in this whole stupid COVID time, where people are freaking out over, this kind of non-existent virus, kind of reminds me of that story, Horton Hears the Who. Remember that? The Dr. Seuss book? Did you ever read that when you were little? Horton Hears a Who?
No, but I read the other ones. But
Yeah,
about
so
Horton and the Who.
yeah. But anyhow, because for us it's been, we've gotten together a few times. We have a really small group, but it's nice to get together with other people who are sane, and these people are really getting the really important dietary information that makes you not afraid to believe to trust your gut, because your gut is in a, when you start eating well and eating the way that traditionally your people ate, or with a lot of fermented foods and preparing the foods properly, which is usually a lot slower than what people cook real fast these days, and it doesn't do the food any good. But so I've found it really invaluable to just have this group of people where we could get together and do stuff, and they're not in fear, and they're not, they have this emotional sort of integrity about them where they're not angry, they're not in fear, they're just kind of like, oh, getting kind of excited about food, and it kind of brings things back to basics and sort of to a ground level of what's really important, which is food. And that's why I really love to listen to your guys' show, because you talk a lot about that and about how to be a part of the solutions rather than just kind of pissing and moaning about all this crazy stuff, because they've been doing crazy stuff for a long, long time. And, they just waste a lot of our time talking and complaining about what they're doing to us. It's been happening for thousands of years, really. And so that's a really good thing about getting involved with these groups. I mean, I like that group because they're not religious at all. It's just has to do with the science around food and gardening and educating people. And so I really appreciate that. We are going to start our movie nights. Again, somebody from the group from a long time ago has emailed us and asked if we can start doing the movies again. So the movie nights, so we're going to start doing that. And, I just feel like all of this is really important for maintaining healthy emotional states in this time, when there's so much fear around, to be able to get together with people who are feeling good, and having their brains work because their gut's in good shape. You got that direct brain and gut connection. And I remember when I first went to the Weston A. Price conference down in LA, me and a friend drove down there, and I was so impressed by these people because they were so dedicated to eating good. Like they just, looking around, they have all these fancy little tops for their mason jars, their candy jars that they had their food in, and so that they didn't leak, and had all those little containers and this and that, and different size coolers, and they just had all of their food for traveling, so they didn't have to eat stuff on the road. And then it was a 4 or 5 day conference, and during that time they served all of the food was cooked according to the Weston A. Price, or the traditional foods which I've talked on my show a lot about like soaking the grains and nuts and legumes and stuff, and sourdough bread, all the wheat products or bread products or pasta even is soured to break down the gluten and the phytic acid, which is dangerous for you, that's inherent in like all of the breads that most people eat and all of the pastas, because they're not soured like they used to do in a long time ago. So there's this thing that happens if you eat those products, wheat and different grains and stuff that aren't soaked or soured, where it prevents you from absorbing minerals and nutrients from your food, not only that food, but all your food. It actually prevents your body from, and so that it contributes to the,
there's an enzyme it's better to even sprout your greens and corns and stuff like that and eat them as a sprouted food because of the rinsing process, right? That can help. But you always start it with putting a little bit of vinegar or a little bit of lemon juice in there, and it breaks down. So basically, it's an enzyme that grows on the outside of grain or beans, linguines, that makes it non-digestible, or metabolic. You can't produce it as metabolic product. It'll just kind of go through your body, and then you have like farting, right? Burping, because that's because of the enzyme that your body doesn't like. That's tough on you. So if you actually soaked your beans the night before with a couple of tablespoons of vinegar, you get this foam on the top, and that foam is all that enzyme that's coming off all the beans. And you rinse them really good and cook them, and then you won't have that gas part, because the gas is just letting you know that your body is probably allergic.
Yeah, you don't have the right enzymes to break it down. So what I was going to say, though, was because when I went to that conference, so we were eating this way, like all of the food was prepared in the real, the proper ways, and it was all organic and all, just really good. And by the third day, I was walking around, and I had been eating these, this way for just only 2.5 days. And I couldn't believe I could feel the molecules and the cells in my body were tingling. I felt so good. And I just thought, oh my gosh, this is our birthright. This is how we should all be feeling. Is this just like really vibrant aliveness, and so that really like kicked me over, because I ate pretty good and I ate organic and I gardened for my whole life, but it just wasn't enough, and switching over to making sure I was eating fermented foods and making sure I was only eating sourdough stuff, soured things, or sprouted grains and legumes and nuts and stuff. And really just for real getting off of the sugars and stuff. Oh my God, my brain has gotten so clear, and I don't have any aches or pains. I can get up. Before I was like have a hard time getting off the ground, if I sat down on the ground and stuff. And it's just amazing. It's really, really exciting.
The thing is like, pretty much all the cultures that all of us come from traditionally ate some type of grain, and maybe even a lot of them. And so to have to deal with the bad consequences of the grain and not actually getting that nutrient into your body, because it has a lot of B vitamins and things like that, which is like one of the top nutritional deficiencies, in Americans, and also, causes damage to your nervous system if you're not eating, like B12. So to be able to soak them and then be able to actually digest them properly, and then also the fats is, that's what your brain needs for food. And a lot of people are not eating the proper fats. Because I think a lot of people think that fats are what you deep fry food in. They don't really think about like all the different types of fat. And then this is the other thing too, is that you have to eat a lot of other fats other than meat fat. And if you barbecue your meat and it blackens, now the fat on it is carcinogenic because you've changed the molecular structure of that fat. So, fat in this day and age, like the oils and all this other information, is super important information for you to know, so that you can, do a lot of better things with your diet, for sure.
Yep. Oh my
All
gosh.
right, well, let's see if Kelsey has anything to say.
Yeah.
I'm
Hello?
surprised you haven't heard of Horton Hears a Who.
Don't get on me for
There's even a movie, and or like the cartoon version of it. I'm having a brain fart myself. So I'm trying to think of who's the voice of Horton. But it's the cutest movie.
Yeah, it's a great book.
Yeah.
I was not a normal child. I didn't have a lot of kids books, but I read a lot. I mean, I was reading, heavy duty stuff in my early teenage years. So I bypassed a lot of the kids books.
I'm a big fan of animation. Well, then I've got a toddler, so that helps.
Yeah, that book is great because it talks about this a who is like a tiny little microscopic thing that nobody can actually see except for Horton, who was an elephant. He could hear it. And so everybody was like freaking out over this who. They wanted to kill it, and like everybody in the culture. It just so reminds me of the COVID thing. What about you, Kelsey? Don't you think that it has like a real correlation?
I think it has. It can, yeah. Especially with like some of the like the gaslighting elements. There's one role that's played by the kangaroo or the kangaroo mom, and I just love the story of the kangaroo Joey in the pouch, and before he breaks out of the pouch, he's advocating for the who's on this little speck, and he's advocating for Horton, and everyone's calling Horton crazy, right? And they're like, there's nothing here. And then this kangaroo mama is like, destroy the speck, it's creating chaos. And then the little kangaroo Joey baby comes in and then kind of saves the day. It's a neat story. Oh, Jim Carrey is the voice. Jim Carrey, Steve Carell, Carol Burnett, they're all voices in it.
Oh, wow. I haven't seen the new one because there was one back when I was young, and I don't think it was Jim Carrey in them. So that's cool. There's a new one.
Kind of. I think 2008 newish. Is what the internet is telling me. Newish. Yeah.
Oh, neat. I'll have to check that out.
It's
that
well
was
done.
always it was one of my favorite stories when I was little for some reason. Maybe I always felt kind of out of it and thinking in different ways. I felt like real separate from like the normal people.
I like the different layers of it though. And just the understanding that, like you're talking about in the microbiomes and thinking of all the like the little tiny creatures that live within us in this like ecosystem, right? That exist in this whole other teeny tiny little world that exists within this speck, and this speck had no idea it was a speck on a little plant either, and just so like having the aha movement of connecting to spirit, there's like connecting to the voice of God in a sense, but there's something beyond that. It's just very multidimensional. That's fun. Acts like Thornton hears a who, huh? Yeah. He's not in his head. We'll have to watch it one day, Bridgette.
Okay, well, one day I'll come over and make dinner, and then, all of us can, we'll like make your mom watch it too.
She's already seen it. Got it.
Well,
so we've watched it a number of times, but it's one of those that I don't mind watching over and over again.
Awesome. Okay, well, we got about 4 minutes before the promos go off. So, hey, Mitzi, is there anything else that you'd like to add? Hey, you should tell people about your show, when your show is.
Yeah, okay, so my show is on Sundays, Studio B. Let's see, what time is it? 2 p.m. Eastern time. It's 11 a.m. my time. And I talk a lot about a lot of this stuff on my shows, and I do talk about a lot about Chinese medicine and I think I've been having this idea to do the whole body, like start with the head, like even just the hair and the scalp, and kind of go down through the different shows and talk about the head and like the eyes and the ears and the nose and different things, and just go through different, like maybe case studies or something about, how to heal things naturally, and kind of go down through there. And I do sometimes, a lot of times I get into the chat room and talk, but yeah, and that's kind of hard. It's distracting for me to go into the chat room, but I like to get questions and things like that. So, it's a good way to get questions. So yeah, healing with the elements of life. It's actually Bridgette's well, which I just, when I was young and first starting off on my spiritual sort of inquiries into the bigger spiritual world, I got into Celtic, the old Celtic religions and neo sort of Celtic, religions. And I learned about Bridgette and the healing wells in Ireland. And so I just really loved it. I went to Ireland a couple years ago and actually went to some of these wells and have pictures of them. They're really beautiful and very sort of feminine healing kind of places to hang out. So that's how come I named my show that, to be just kind of like a place to hang out and talk about, being part of the solutions and old wisdoms and stories and things. So yeah. So that's Sundays, Studio B, 2 p.m.
Awesome. And then
Yeah.
maybe we'll have you on again and we'll actually talk about the topic we were going to talk about, which was acupuncture and the multidimensional aspects.
Well, that would be great. Yeah, I would love to talk about that, because there's just so much there, really. But it was nice to talk about gardening, because it seems like, yeah, the ground is sort of surging right now with that energy of like, yeah, get started. So
Yeah.
yeah.
All right. So we're heading on to promos. So Mitzi's going to drop off. Kelsey and I will be back after the promos. So stay tuned for the second hour with the gruesome twosome.
Okay, good night, you guys. Thanks so much
Good
for having me on, and I'll
night.
come on again. Good
All
night.
right. Mute out. Mitzi on the first hour. And what'd you think of Mitzi, Kelsey?
I can't wait to talk to her about acupuncture and stuff and all the energetic stuff. I think it'll be great to have her back.
Yeah. So anyway, we'll have to have her back and talk about all that, and very exciting. Oh, and hey, donate. Hey, everybody, everything we do, the new servers and the new studios and all of the glitches being fixed for you and me and us here at Revolution Radio, and we do all of it for free. We just need you to help us keep the lights going and the servers running. So please donate. We can always use donations. COVID was pretty tough. We came out of Nighthawk's death, our founder, and PayPal shutting us down, and all kinds of people closing our accounts where there was money that I don't even think our station's actually even gotten back. And then bam, slammed right into COVID. I mean, I'm really, proud of all the people that kept it going. It was a major, huge thing. And right now we're the only non-corporatized First Amendment radio that is still out there. So, please support us. Please continue to support us. And you can go to Revolution Radio, freedomslips.com. And there's all kinds of categories now. Hit the donation category. It'll drop down. It'll give you all kinds of options on helping us. Even if you're international, we have an international money box now. And then also we have our store. So get some T-shirts too, and support us in any way you can. We appreciate it. And let's see. So do you want to talk about your week now?
No, do you?
It must have been a bad one.
No, it's not. It's not a bad one. It's just been a long week. I think I'm just with the new third year of a new project coming on, and with COVID and all just it's just like wham bam, thank you ma'am, one thing after another. I think things are good and they're moving in a positive direction. I'm just tired of working and being, or like working too hard for nothing. I'm tired of being tired for nothing.
For
Not that it's nothing. I'm grateful, but.
Well, when you want to cut your own path, you have to machete. It's exhausting.
Yeah.
Because, going where no man has gone before can be kind of a tough place.
Got a couple thorns in my side, but it's all good.
I almost got eaten by the giant mantis flytrap the other day. My arm got stuck in it and I had to chop him down.
I see the boa constrictor on the horizon. Look out.
I know, exactly. Yeah, exactly. So I thought maybe the second hour we would, because Mitzi wanted to go check out, them, slaughtering the cow and all that other stuff. Plus it's a shared cow. So everybody that, bought into it should be present, you know what I mean, to do the slaughtering and, to gather their meat and get it home and put it in the freezer. It's important to show up for that kind of stuff. So, but I was thinking that we might talk about kind of an interesting topic and probably only going to hit on it a little bit, and which is the 12 sensing organs that Rudolf Steiner talked about in his work. And these are ways that we, sense what's going on. And so he went from, 5 sensing organs, like what we normally talk about. There's 4 sensing organs: taste, touch, smell, hearing. And then people like to add in, this, it's the 6th sense. And then they like to add in the psychic one, the 6th sense. So in Steiner's work, he went kind of like further deeper into it. So I thought that might be kind of a cool thing to just toss out. And then there was also this one special part. Let me see if I can find it. And this is for Kelsey to perk her up. It's like a little present. So in this one section, it's talking about the role of art. Steiner was kind of really big into art and art therapy and movement therapy, along with nutrition and plant medicine and homeopathic remedies, and also, of course, soil and all of the remedies that go along with that. But the role of artwork in dealing with your 12 sense organs. So this is kind of like just kind of a thing. I'll just read it. The role of art. There are different ways in which art can be used to facilitate observation. Drawing an object can force you to look with greater precision than if you were only describing it in words. Drawing gives you a deeper understanding of shapes. Making a clay model of an animal also gives you a better idea of the exact proportions of the animal. A cow is different from a bull and is nothing like a rhinoceros. Compared to looking at it and recording its vital statistics, modeling an animal results in better observation of the proportions between height, length, and breadth of animal, of where it stands taller, which part of its body is lower. Art can also play an important role in preparing the ground for making inner images and empathic observation. Artistic expression is dynamic and helps internalize an observation. Trying to express the robustness and power of an oak in a painting, and try to also express gracefulness of the birch. Color can be used in a great effect to express the mood of the tree. Artistic creation builds a relationship between you and the object, thus bringing you closer to a state of empathetic observation. This effect is even stronger if you draw trees from memory, that when you can draw them directly. Artistic activity is not a goal in itself, but an aid to improve one's observations. This can be archived by all types of artistic expression: painting, drawing, modeling, sculpture, song, speech, dance, and movement.
Boy, I love drawing trees, I tell you. It's one of my favorite subjects. I haven't done it in a while, but I used to just drive to the park, pull out my sketchbook, and just draw trees. Pick a tree, like bark, all the different bark textures, and like the knots and the angles and the shadows. And I have a tendency to like make my trees into like people-like shapes, or there's always like arms and legs or torsos kind of twisted around each other. Yeah, trees are fun. Leaves, lots of colors you can do for leaves, or even just the tree bark. And yeah, drawing trees is fun.
But anyway, I thought that you would like that.
I do like that.
That little paragraph of art. Okay, so we're going to move into the 12 senses, and so I'm just going to kind of go briefly over them.
Okay.
So it says each one of them, because they're pretty lengthy, you know, if you do the whole thing around each one of them. So I'm going to be doing a blog on each one of them, the totality of it all, including the exercise that goes along with it, on my blog on coe-llc.com, and the blog is right there on the front. So I will be adding these on, maybe even starting tomorrow or Monday. So if people want to look at them there, they can find them there. But I have not done them yet. All right, so Steiner's 12 senses can be grouped into 3 categories. He distinguished senses which relate to the perception of your body, the sense of touch, of life, of movement, of balance. The external world, smell, taste, sight, temperature. And the immaterial spirit world, hearing, speech, thought, and ego. All right, so this is on will, feeling, and thought. So it says the first 4 senses, the lowest, are called the physical senses, or senses of the will, because they are used to perceive one's own body. The middle 4 senses are the senses of feeling. Observation made with these senses arouse feelings. These senses are also reflected in our language: a tasteful, furnished house, a sourpuss, hard to swallow, heartwarming, cold thought. The last 4 senses, the highest focus, particular on the other, these are spiritual or knowledge senses, and they are used in observation of other people. All right. So the first one is the sense of touch. It says your sense of touch or tactile sense is made up from very fine networks of receptors in your skin, forming the body's largest sensory organ and system. Because there are so many sensory nerves, you can feel the slightest touch. The skin is your body's shield, and touch makes you aware of your boundaries. Your sense of touch only gives you experience of being touched by a thing in order to know what is touching you. The observation needs to be expanded with your other senses by looking at what's touching you, feeling its structure or temperature. The sense of touch is formed by the large number of tactile organs situated in just under the skin surface of the skin between the epidermis and the dermis. All right, now let's go down to the next one. All right, the second one is the sense of life. It says the sense of life is the external sense of your organs and internal life process. Your life sense tells you that you are full, that you have indigestion or that you have to go to the toilet. You do not sense anything as long as your life processes are following their normal harmonious course. You do not register the life sense until one of these life processes is disturbed and when you are ill. Other examples of observation made by your life sense are your stomach ache, congestion of nose, or sinusitis. You do not perceive your organs or life sense unless something is wrong. All right. Let's talk about, that was kind of an interesting thing, about all the stuff going on.
Just the awareness of
stomach
life.
ache and all that other stuff. Like someone close to you was having a sense of life. All right.
Your tummy ache, don't worry, it's just your sense of life.
Yeah. What's really the problem? Okay, 3, sense of movement or muscle sense. The previous 2 senses observed the body's boundaries, the body's internal state, and the space it takes up. The sense of movement or of the muscles enables you to perceive your body's movement and posture. Your body's limbs, eyes, mouth, tongue, and forehead and chest is never still. All these movements are perceived and are very accurately too. You can perceive 0.038 degree turn of the elbow. Not only do you perceive your movements, you are also aware of the exact position of your limbs and all other moving parts of your body. At any given moment, you know exactly where your arms and feet are. This is essential information. If you're going to execute a new movement, you have to know where the movement is to begin. You don't have to think about this. The sense movement is always present. Dun, dun, dun. All right.
Okay. We're forming relationships between our body and the world around us.
All right. Number 4, the sense of balance. We use our sense balance to orient ourselves in the world. Observations made with this sense let you know what is up and down and left and right, in front and behind, above and below. The sense of balance perceives smallest changes in the vertical position. Your body has a dynamic equilibrium. You maintain your balance by making very small adjustments in muscle tension in muscles all over your body. Every time you stand up, you have to rediscover your balance by using this sense. Your organ of balance is not only organ that you use to maintain your balance. Your eyes are at least as important to orient yourself to your surroundings. Your eyes see vertical and horizontal objects, which confirm the information given by your organ of balance. Try walking in a room where everything is at odd angles. Your balance could be so distorted by the surface of the water in the bucket, which is in fact horizontal, would appear to be sloping downhill.
Yes, now we're diving into the realm of creativity and arts and
yeah,
we perceive things, the perceptions.
All right. Let's see. Let's go down to number 5, the sense of smell. You smell things with your nose. Each time you breathe in a new scent of particulars brush past the nostril, deep inside your nose. The nasal mucosa are connected directly with your brain by a short nerve, so that you perceive sense almost immediately. It is so fast that you can be taken by a surprise when you're smelling something odd. You cannot block out sense without holding your breath, which you can never do for long. When you have been exposed to a scent for a while, you stop noticing it, nor will you notice the gradual strength of a smell, strengthening of a scent. You only notice it if you go away from it for a while and then come back to it. In that case, you probably will be amazed that you did not notice it before. This can be illustrated by the following example. Once, my team and I had to clean the small intestines of a cow. In this procedure, the intestinal contents are slowly pushed out of the intestines, even as the volume of is drained intestinal content, thus the smell increased. We were hardly aware of the stench in which we were working. At some point, we went to break for tea, and then only on return from the clean air did we notice the awful smell on our hands and clothing. It says, since you have to keep breathing, you cannot help but to perceive scents. There's no way to block them out. So that's one of our strongest sense organs. Because, you know, what happens when you completely stop breathing for a long period of time?
That, like, when we get used to something, it's when we habituate to it, and that happens with a few of our senses too. I would say not just smell, but smell is so tied into memory.
I think smell is like my strongest memory brain. I've gotten to where I can go out in nature and not just look at, you know, when you learn herbs, they try to teach you the shapes. So you can look out into a huge meadow and then you can pick out the shapes that you know, even from far away. But I have a smell. I can smell if those plants are in there, you know, like a certain time of year when they're actually growing. But yeah, smell is good. Nature smell is good.
Yeah, smells fun.
Okay, so let's go on to number 6. Sense of taste. The tongue is the organ of taste. In order to taste something, you must actually put it into your mouth. In addition, the substance must be dissolved in water or saliva, as you can only taste liquids or soluble solids. The observation of taste is made up by 2 components, the actual taste of something and its smell. When something in your mouth, its smell enters your nose, and when you put something into your mouth, its smell can change as the scent particles are released. Actual taste is limited to 4 possibilities: sweet, sour, salty, and bitter. If you hold your nose and put something in your mouth, you will only be able to distinguish these 4 tastes. There would be no observations. If you could smell, all the jams would taste the same, sugary and sweet. The 4 tastes are perceived by the tongue, which has 4 zones, 1 for each taste. The sweet is at the tip of your tongue, so you will perceive that taste first. The receptors for sour and salty are on the sides of the tongue, and the bitter is the tasted as the back of the tongue. You cannot bear very strong taste, with the exception of sweet. Too much of any taste becomes an unpleasant experience. And then let's see. All right. Down to sense of sight. It says your eyes are almost important sensory organ. They are the only organs located visibly on your body's surface. Seeing is often used synonymously for observing or understanding. Yet in actual fact, your eyes only see colors and light and dark. You can see shapes, motions, and portions because your eyes move and work together with the sense of movement and balance. It is easier to block visual stimuli than smells or taste. There is a distance between you and what you see, unless you observe more consciously. Of all your senses, sight contributes most to your awareness. You are an organism with conscious thought, which is intricately involved with the act of seeing. This also means that it is easier to be mistaken about what you see than what you smell. For example, sometimes your thoughts determine what you see. You can experience this in 2 exercises below. And so it goes into some scientific data about the old eyeball. Okay, let's see what else we have going on here. Let's go into sense of temperature. It says you use your sense of temperature to observe how hot or cold objects or your surroundings are. The sense temperature is made up of a distinct sensory receptor for hot and cold located in the dermis. There are more receptors for cold than hot. As with the sense of touch, every part of your skin senses temperature. There is a difference, however, when something touches you, you feel part of the body is touched. The sense of temperature is observed in relationship to your own temperature, to the body surface area being exposed to coldness or heat. If you put your finger in the bucket of water and then into water, which is 3 degrees warmer, you would hardly feel the difference. You would feel some difference if you stuck your hand into the buckets. And if you submerge your entire lower arm, you would feel the temperature difference even more strongly. The largest surface area perceiving the change of temperature, more accurately, you estimate the difference. Lying naked in a bath, you can perceive deviations of only 0.3 degrees Celsius. When the bath water has cooled a little, you'll perceive it as a larger difference. All right. Your sense of temperature. It's kind of interesting, you know, like somebody like Steiner is just so good with kind of our conscious aspects of so many different parts of our life. You know, like it's always interesting to me when I first came in contact with the 12 sense organs, because, you know, when you hear something like that, the 12 sensing organs, like what, you know, WTHF, because it's a lot of his work and a lot of some of the people that were, you know, at his same time or before him, and the languaging that they talked was kind of a language of their own that they developed based on their intelligence, their education, and their, you know, paths and their branches that they were creating. It's interesting to me because in this day and age, you know, we're not taught to do that, to conceptualize, contemplate all this information and education and everything we're getting, and then come up with our own body of work. You know, we're not taught that. We're taught to continue to talk about other people's bodies of work and write our papers and everything else based on their work, instead of actually going out and creating a whole new body of work from it.
Art's kind of like that. I would say that, especially within the visual arts, people really strive to be unique and genuine. It's kind of hard, I think, at this point to really come up with something new. But I think that's where like the concepts of things come into play. Learning to think beyond what we see. I don't know. Art is very abstracted in and of itself, but it's hard to do. It's like hacking through the jungle. Because now we got like a tribe of killer monkeys coming after us.
Well, but then, I mean, like, even that, it's like you have to be part of the rebels, right? Mm-hmm. The people who want to be out of the box, not the totality of the whole. Or the totality of the whole at one time, you know, they were like creating their own bodies of knowledge and bodies of work and their specialty, you know, based off of the things that they had learned and studied. And that was the norm. And, you know, didn't have to be like the rebel. But maybe hopefully, you know, we'll go back towards that. I definitely fight for my body of work that I've learned. I mean, I haven't written any books. I don't even know if that'll ever happen, but I do have distinctive, you know, ideas. And, you know, it'd be nice to see more people, you know, instead of barfing up other people's stuff, you know, to start creating their own. Anyway, that's balanced too, I guess. Okay, so sense of hearing. Number 9. Oh, hey, we're already to number 9. That's great.
Cool.
And then we'll do, maybe there's an exercise here we can do for one of those things at the end. Okay, so the ears pick up on your own sounds and those made by others, human or animal. Unlike your eyes, your ears are positioned at the side of your head. Your ears are open to sounds from your internal surroundings. It is not necessary to position the ears directly in front of the sound. You can close your ears so that you are connected with the world. Oh, you cannot close your ears so that you're not connected with the world of sound during all your waking hours. You cannot help but to hear them. Listening, conscious hearing, requires you to be quiet. You must keep still yourself and take a back seat, as it were. Listening in a social activity focus on others. It is also an internal activity. How often did your teacher say, sit still and listen carefully? Animals can turn their ears towards a source of sound. Humans do not have that ability to see with their ears. Animals hear well, but they do not listen, and they cannot step out of themselves and become silent. The hearing organ can be divided into 3 parts. The external ear, consisting of the concha and the ear canal, captures the sound. The eardrum is situated at the end of the ear canal. The middle ear carries the sound further. The middle ear is made up of a tamperium, which in turn contains the 3 ossal bones and the Essechucan tube, which connects the typium to the throat. And then the inner ear is located in the temporal bone and consists of a labyrinth and cavity filled with fluid that is made up the vestibules, conchalae, 3 semi-canals, and they're used to maintain balance. So, but also the ear can be used along with the sense of balance. Okay, so let's see. Let's go to number 10. Sense of speech or words. This is a super good one for 100 years ago. I mean, because this was written, Steiner's stuff was written over 100 years ago. Some of it, about 100 years. Okay, so the sense of speech or words. The sense of speech, thought, and ego were actually the first sense identified by Rudolf Steiner. These 3 senses are referred to as the spiritual senses because they are used in observation of human characteristics, the spoken word, thoughts, and individuality of others. The first 4 senses focus on one's body. The next 5 focus on the external world and can be used in any situation. The last 3 senses discussed from here on out are most useful in having meaning, especially in the interaction between people. There's a difference between the perception of sound and music and the perception of speech. When listening to human speech, you perceive the vowels and consonants which make up the words. Your ears perceive both the acoustic and the musical aspects of language, but not the essence of or meaning of the speech. The actual words are perceived by another sense that we refer to as sense of speech. When you meet somebody, their posture and facial expressions, the look in their eyes, and the gestures of their hands and body, and the sound of their voice all reveal information about the inner state and character. By listening to the words people say, you can observe their thoughts, opinions, judgments, experiences, and personality. When listening to somebody speak, the first thing you perceive is not what is being said, but the rhythm and intonation. Rhythm and intonation reveal agreement, rejection, scorn, or admiration, good or bad, intentions, and so on. It says, you hear more than just the meaning of words. Brief reactions can be interpreted quite accurately on the basis of context and the nuances of tone alone. You can perceive how the speakers intended to convey the message, and in doing so have observed something about the speaker's inner being. Okay. Next, number 11, sense of thought. Your sense of thought observes the thought of others, specifically observes the views, considerations, and questions that others have, and thus get an idea of what they are thinking. You must distinguish between the sound of a word and its meaning. Next to the tonal shape of the word, words have meaning. In order to understand what someone is saying, you must know the denotative meaning of the words and to be able to distill coherent thought from the arrangement of the words. When you focus on someone's way of speaking, that is in a phonemic image, the substance of what they are saying will pass you by. But when you concentrate on the substance, you do not hear the way in which the message is conveyed. This is most apparent when you hear a language being spoken that you do not understand. You can pick up certain tones, but you do not have the faintest idea what is being said. Clearly, sense of speech and sense of thought perceive different compartment aspects of the human communication. Imaginary is a descriptive tool. For example, you could describe how a woodpecker hammers an oak tree. This would immediately raise images of an oak tree, a woodpecker, in the listener's mind. They might even hear their minds the drumming sound of the woodpecker. Their imaginations color the story as you tell it to them. Everyone will have their own specific image based on their own personal experience and past observations. Okay, that was the sense of thought. Last one, sense of ego. And Steiner doesn't always talk about ego as a bad thing. It's what kind of makes us developing into the human, because it is the sense of I. And he says right now the fifth post-Atlantic epoch period that goes to 3572, that's what we're working on, is our individualism, and then also the development of intellect and our ability to think, and that the ego basically serves, it's interchangeable with I, the I. The I as in I, me, I. I am reading this. Sense of ego. The last sense in the sense of ego with which you observe the other's personality or individuality. This sense needs to be activated because in practice, with people tending to be distracted by their own and others' habits and emotions, the sense of ego is barely used. Steiner described the observation of someone's personality as follows. You spend some time observing the other so that you have an impression of him. The impression imposes on your inner being a feeling that resembles an assault. Your response is to retaliate, and you throw the other out of your inner being. This causes your aggression to diminish so that you can allow the other, again, attraction and repellent, sympathy and antipathy alternate. What this means is that you want to get to know someone's personality, you must allow him into your inner being, but you can only tolerate the intrusion for a little while. Before long, you need to have your own inner being to yourself again, and so you throw the other out. This process can be repeated. The ego sense is used in various ways. You can observe someone's individually, most directly in their eyes. The eyes gives you an unfettered view of the other's ego. Unless you are in love with that person, you can only do this for a short while before the other's before you start feeling uncomfortable. When you look into someone's eyes and encounter them, something gets sent back to you. There is resistance as you have entered in the other person's space. You cannot look into both of someone's eyes with your own two eyes. You have to look with alternative eyes. Generally, you will have preference for one eye as it makes you feel uncertain. You will probably experience a little trouble looking children in the eyes for a long period of time as their gaze is returned soft. The sample applies to the gaze of animals. The difference between human and animals can also be experienced in this way. The handshake is also an expression of someone's personality and enables mutual observation of each other's ego. As with eye contact, you observe the other intensely when you shake their hand. This intensity occurs in the encounter of two individuals. In both cases, you can hold out for a while, but then you either need to draw away or vary the contact by alternating between focus and retreating. You also observe somebody's personality by their posture or their body movement. You can also observe how the forces of their personality shape the body and how their body is used. By absorbing someone's posture and movements, you can perceive how the other's ego functions in their body. Important physical aspects to know are the other's balance. Are they standing straight or not? The way that the other stands on the ground. Are staking on the surface? Are they hovering above? Are they too deeply rooted? And the way the other walks. When you listen to somebody, you also observe something of the individual. You can tell whether something is telling something that comes from within, whether they are relating something that has not been internalized. The individual line of thought also reveals the other's personality, especially if you follow that line from the distance with positive, critical attitude. You observe these thoughts with your sense thought. The individual aspect of the thoughts are perceived by the sense of ego. The meaning conveyed by spoken words depends on who is talking. Two people can say the same word but mean different things. Okay, so that's that. All right, so let me go in here and look really quick. Then there's a whole other section here, but I just wanted to go up here and see if we can't find them. So, hey, Kelsey?
Bridgette?
So do you have any opinions of any of that? Anything that kind of crossed your mind that you wanted to spout up about?
On that last little bit, one of the examples I find myself using all the time, or that I bring up all the time when it comes to like neurolinguistic programming of words and how we view them in our imaginations, is to give the other person, like, picture a cat in your head, right? Like, we can agree that, or like the cat that you have pictured in your head is probably a lot different than the cat that I have pictured in my head, right? And then, because I've done this so long, like, I have a lot of other very abstract things just kind of paired into that cat. And then, for the sake of, like, secret communication, right, we can agree that the cell phone is now a cat. And then I can be like, oh, my cat's ringing. And then people would be like, what are you talking about, right? But you would know it's my cell phone. So, yeah, words get super complex. And I think people put a lot of magical thinking into words, or they give words all this power, but words it's behavior, it's verbal behavior. And I think if we can get really clear on how we use our words and how it syncs up to our imaginations, and then find a way to accurately convey what's in our imaginations into the real world, or to make those translations, it's key. I guess that would be what, like, integrating, or at least bringing in all of the senses. And then one of the other ones that stood out to me, or like my mind started wandering into, like, the sensory deprivation tanks too. You can go in and then you have the out-of-body experiences. And I think that came to mind when you were talking about balance. Because the very first time I did it, the orientation, everything was just so disoriented. I didn't know like which direction was up or down or left or right, and it was just one of the most novel and funny feeling things, like being on a roller coaster almost. It's amazing what the mind can do when you take out some of those physical senses and then you focus mostly on some of those upper senses and who am I and what is the we and who am I in this physical body. So I think a lot of people do get choked up around ego, and our modern culture throws around ego and narcissism, and especially with women, like talking about I, me, we, like I don't know, I can see where there's an overemphasis on certain senses in some situations, or like it just discounting, or I wonder what your thoughts are on if people are not necessarily conscious of a sense, or if they're not. But I guess like within this work, you can't not have any of these senses. Is that correct? Or is like there a way that you can be like...
Well, Steiner talked about that these are all the senses we have, the way he saw it, and that mostly how to develop them so we can actually utilize them, because most of everybody, they're under the surface, and that we don't really know because we're not really observing how many senses we have. And I think about it this way, the more senses that that I learn and I work with within my own life, the more, I hate that word psychic, but the more, I guess, maybe connected. And I don't really like the word intuitive either, but the more, connected that I feel to everything around me. And, I don't really need to be psychic. I don't really need to be a medium. All I have to do is just connect all these different senses up and pay attention to them.
What I think that psychic part is I think it's tapped in or related to synesthesia. Because in one hand, we're all psychic or have the capacity to be psychic. It can be trained, it can be learned, people take classes on it. And then as an undergrad, there was a graduate student who was doing a study on how synesthesia can be trained, it can be learned. And for those people who don't know, synesthesia is like the crossing of senses. So it's being able to like taste a color or hear a smell, or people have a lot of very different bizarre like crossings or overlappings of this, where one sense kind of blends into another. So I wonder what Steiner would say about that, or if synesthesia is something that people were aware of centuries ago or not.
Yeah, I don't know. Steiner talks a lot about how we were involved directly with, beings like angels and different kinds of multidimensional beings all the time that were helping us, that had lots of technology, and then at some point they decided that they were going to not be around us anymore because they had to give us a period to develop on our own, because we had to develop our mind, the brain, we had to develop our intellect, we had to develop a lot of things so that it would give to free will. And what would we choose in that free will? And how would we evolve that free will? What would it evolve into? And, we're in that period where we're finding that out now. So, I think those beings were around us all the time, and you could just ask them questions and talk to them. And now we're kind of in that period where a few of us are kind of tapped in, where, maybe some of us are still kind of getting information from some of those beings here and there, or from different places. That's kind of like how I look at it. But I'd much rather, instead of, be intuitive or psychic or any of these other things, mediumistic, that, I've probably been called in the past. I'd rather just be connected. And I think, using these 12 sense observations, just observations that I have these 12 senses, and then how do I get them maybe to work together? And then how do I open up the ones that, I may not be utilizing? Like
to them, like people who are deaf or like people who are blind, I think are really fascinating because they come up with other means to navigate or to perceive the world, or other senses become heightened. Like if you're blind, then you may have,
But what if you could just do that now? You wouldn't have to be like deaf or blind, but you could, work with, some of these 12 sense observations and build those, so you didn't have to wait until a time where you needed to really rely on them.
Would there be a time where any of them wouldn't be valuable?
Well, I think they're just kind of I don't think that, but I think that some of them are just kind of, under the radar. You know what I mean? They're kind of like more, more under the radar, and that, when I remember one time when I interviewed Lujan Matus, who, I'd been following for a long time, his books and stuff, and I was really shocked when I had my first online TV show a few years ago, 2016, I think, and he said he would come on. Very, very conscious, probably one of the most conscious people, that I'm just unbelievable. And one of the things he said is that, he was living in Cambodia, and he would train people. People would come there, and, he would train them. And he said one of the things that, he notices is that, like, you're walking by and there's all these monkeys in the tree, right? And at that point, they're just monkeys, right? They're just wild monkeys in the tree. But the one moment that they change from being monkeys in the tree into conscious beings is the moment that you look at them and look into their eyes, and they look into your eyes, and now there's this conscious connection.
It makes me think of people who lose connection to their senses, like through different traumas, or like people in coping, or just the psyche's natural way of coping through some really difficult things, and how it plays with the senses, or it screws up the senses in such a way, or like with dissociating, where people get out of the body because they're over sensing. That stuff just kind of, and then when people get detached from their senses, just how far disconnected they are from everything around them, people, the monkeys, trees, their food.
Food for sure.
Yeah.
They're way, extremely separated from like food, and so there's a exercise here for like I said, I'll put this stuff on my blog, because for each sense there's an exercise that goes along with it. So this one's for the sense of touch. So I'm just going to throw it out there here in the last 2 minutes of the show, and then we will for sure see you back here next Saturday. Same bat time, same bat channel.
Yeah.
So exercise for touch this is an exercise for 2 people to discover the density tactile organ on different parts of your body. Take 2 pins and hold them at a fixed distance from each other. Then press them softly into the part of the subject's body: underarm, hand, finger, fingertip, back, shin. Does the subject feel 1 or 2 pricks? Reduce the distance between the pins until 2 pin pricks are felt as 1. Repeat this on other parts of the body, such fingertip, palm, back of hand, or leg. Close your eyes and ask somebody to give you an object at room temperature. This is the second part. When you first receive it, do not move your hands. Try to feel it by using your sense of touch. Then start feeling it with your hands. Describe the object and try to experience what it is. And there's a third part here. One person is blindfolded. Someone she knows stands in front of her, and she must find out who it is by feeling the person's face. Number 4 exercise, ask somebody to blindfold you and try to resolve. Ask somebody to blindfold you and try to solve a wooden puzzle using your sense of touch. This exercise demonstrates that touching results in different perceptions to sight. Take 2 trees of different species and examine them visually. Then go to the tree and touch the trunk. Describe the difference. You can also do this exercise with objects instead of trees, which is kind of cool. Put a blindfold on and then go touch trees, right? Could be a really fun kind of a thing. So anyway, that's the end of our show. I think probably the promos are going to explode. So thanks for listening. Thanks, Mitzi, for coming on. Thanks, Kelsey.
Thank you, Bridgette. Thanks for everything you do, and helping make this happen, and digging the holes, carrying the stones, and shoveling the shit, and no.
Daily, right? All right.